Morning. My name is Andy Labar, and I'm the Executive Vice President here at the Ann Arbor Ypsi Regional Chamber. And I want to welcome all of you to our May virtual early edition. This is a very special early edition with our focus here on mental health. Before I begin on the program today, though, I want to make a quick logistical note. Many of you joined us for the headline lunch we had last Friday with Senator Stabenow, and you were interested in seeing that video or sharing it on recording. I want to let you know programs like Early Edition and our headline lunch, look for the recording of that in the next upcoming chamber flash. So in the instance of Senator Stabenow, had it on a Friday, look for it in the Tuesday chamber flash. Today's program, look for in tomorrow's chamber flash. And we will be posting those up on the website as well. We know a lot of members can join us for part of the program and then follow up and watch the rest, or share it within their organization or friends. We encourage you to do that, and just want to make that clear. Again, we have really a very special early edition today. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and that means it's really the perfect opportunity for us to discuss the role of mental health in the workplace and those resources that are available to businesses and organizations. And obviously, this is particularly relevant given some of the broader societal issues we've seen around mental health during the COVID pandemic, and as we hopefully make our way out of it. And we've got a fantastic panel that I will get to introduce here in just a few minutes. But we cannot put on events like this, nor programming that helps our chamber members without the support of our sponsors. And here today, as both a panelist, but also here speaking for our sponsor, is Cindy Bjorquist. She is the Director of Wellbeing for Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. Again, she'll be joining us on the panel as well. But Cindy, as our sponsor, I want to give you some time to share with us all that's going on with Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Great. Thank you, Andy. You know, we at Blue Cross are so happy to sponsor this virtual event. It's directly in line with what our main focus area is this year. And in fact, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, as you said, and I'm wearing a t-shirt. For those of you that don't, I've got this weird t-shirt on instead of an actual shirt. It says everybody versus stigma. And I kind of made a commitment during the month of May for mental health awareness to wear this t-shirt every single time I present, to try to bring awareness to the subject. And actually the t-shirt was made by Kevin Fisher and his wife, a Detroit-based company. And their whole theme behind these t-shirts is to try to elevate awareness and elevate the anti-stigma campaigns that people are doing out there, which is what Blue Cross is heavily focused on this year as well. Unfortunately, Kevin's son committed suicide. And so he's got this passionate plea, if you will, to do exactly probably what all of us on the panel are going to talk about today, is to start having the conversation with employees, your friends and your family about mental illness and get rid of the stigma. Yesterday, I had the pleasure to actually interview Eric Hipple, who wrote this book, Real Men Do Cry. He's a former Detroit Lions quarterback. Phenomenal story that you can all access through a program that Blue Cross has called Virtual Wellbeing. But his story, similar to Kevin's again, which just makes this such an important topic and I applaud you for bringing this topic forward to people today, is anti-stigma. Eric is a man and an NFL quarterback, and he tried to commit suicide. His son committed suicide successfully, and he struggled with depression and had no idea what the signs and symptoms of depression were. And that's another theme that you're going to see come out of, Blue Cross and really every health plan out there, is to elevate the awareness of mental health issues, to talk about it to the people around you, your friends, your family. I'm a mother of two boys who are now in their 20s. So I've been talking to them about counseling their whole life. It's not a stigma wrapped around, hey, if you're having a tough time right now in college, or now that you own a house and all the life pressures of having a new job, let me know and we can get you into a counselor. That's the kind of platform that these two gentlemen have. Blue Cross is taking that and running with this idea that we need to elevate this conversation. One of the things that Blue Cross is doing, Andy, is to make public this entire microsite, if you go to bcbsm.com, that has behavioral health resources there for people. And when I say people, I mean employers, and I mean mothers and men and people who are struggling with their jobs. And so the idea that an urgency is behind behavioral health, an urgency is behind mental health and the stigma, and it's, we call it whole health. But I like how when I read the advertisement for this actual narrative of what we're going to talk about in the panel, you put the word well-being in there too, because we'll talk later on the panel about the idea of well-being, my entire self, how I feel, my physical, my mental, everything about me integrates with this behavioral health story. And that in itself is something that we're trying to push out from Blue Cross as well. So there's an urgency. You know, Mercer had a national survey that said the number one employer focus for well-being in 2021 is to ensure that employees get the behavioral health care they need. And we're taking that very personal. We're going public with that, and we're trying to push the resources out for people to do that, because it's one thing to know that you could go to counseling. In my analogy with my son, it's another thing to have people know that if they struggle with these, we'll say depression or anxiety or symptoms for more than 14 days, they should seek care. And so getting them access to care, knocking the costs out of that to what we can, that is what we're trying to push to people: awareness and then getting care. So it's a huge story, and I'm really looking forward to share that kind of story on the panel with Abigail and Trish, because that's what we need to do, is start escalating the conversation and getting people to start talk about it.
Cindy, thank you. You know, usually our sponsor remarks, while they're great, they tend not to be so intimately tied necessarily with the topic we're discussing at Early Edition. But certainly that is not the case in this instance. And if I could, why don't we then just start with you, and then we'll hear from Abby, and then Trish, and then after that we'll have a bit of panel discussion. And I encourage the folks who are watching to put any questions you have in either the chat application or just a direct message to me, and we'll get through as many of those as we can. So Cindy, you mentioned something that's important to us as a chamber too, about the trying to eliminate or at least mitigate this sense of stigma. And I just want to, on the chamber's behalf, thank you for bringing that up, because that's something that is important for an organization like us to help spread the word and sort of validate within the business community. And I know you do a whole lot more. Can you tell us a little bit about your position, and what is your being the director of well-being? What does that mean at Blue Cross Blue Shield? Tell us just a bit more, Cindy.
Yeah, I had an email exchange with one of the VPs in another area last night in Blue Cross. And I told her, I said, I'm fortunate because I love my job. I'm passionate about my job. And so in my job role, I get to help people live a thriving life. I mean, I work tirelessly trying to make the connections to other parts in Blue Cross, the behavioral health area, who is doing a phenomenal strategy with what they're doing to support employers and members and the public with this focus area of behavioral health. I've got a staff of people that go out to workforces, and they actually work with employers to help change the culture in this well-being space. And then most importantly, in my role in the last couple of years, since January 2019, is to produce a show called Virtual Wellbeing for Blue Cross on behalf of Blue Cross, but it's open to the public. And that's the show that I talked about, where I talked to Eric Hipple yesterday, and tomorrow on Thursday, I'll have a one for public people to come into. The entire show on Tuesdays for any employer out there, and on Thursdays for any person out there. It's live at noon. And it's just to help people with their overall well-being. And so since 2019, it's been focusing on the overall definition of well-being, whether it be community, social connection, financial well-being, emotional well-being, physical well-being. It's just in the last 2 years, last year and this year, that we have zeroed in on those things that are affecting people now with an urgency: social isolation, community, people feeling scared, they're depressed, they're anxious. So all of these things that are tying into what your topic is today, to elevate the conversation about behavioral health, to understand that people need to understand how they can get to a thriving state as much as they can on that continuum. That's what that show is all about. So my role, I would think, is to be an ambassador to all the amazing things that Blue Cross as an organization is doing in those spaces, but then also is that show that I produce on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And the content that we develop is zeroed in again on supporting people and the struggles that they're having. And it just so happens we've had a lot of content in the last 2 years because of what we've gone through with the pandemic. And then going forward, all the downstream trickling effects of that. Burnout is such a huge topic right now. We never thought that we would actually take burnout, which I've been talking about for years, and just amp it up to the level that we're at right now, or anxiety or depression or suicide rates, or all the things that tie in to what we're going to talk about in the panel today. Those things are in emergency state for people. And so supporting them and giving them that content. The other big thing that I do is, last year, I started what's called Drop 5 for Blue Cross, which is a weight loss program, but it's virtual. So on Thursdays, now we have thousands of people that are just dialing in at noon, or they can watch it on demand. And they're a part of this community of people trying to lose 5 pounds at a time. And that was important before, but now people are struggling and they have all the stress of what's going on in their life and their work. And then they're trying to lose the weight. It gets overwhelming. So supporting those people is also a new focus area at Blue Cross. And I feel very fortunate because I'm just one of those people that are very passionate and love my job. And so helping people, I would say, is the best definition of what I do at Blue Cross.
Thank you. We appreciate hearing more about the position, and we'll look forward to hearing more in the panel. Our next panelist, Abby McCleary. Abby, thank you for being with us. You have a remarkable title as well, which is Colleague Lifestyle Medicine and Wellness Coordinator for St. Joseph Mercy Health System. Tell us a bit more about your role and what you do at St. Joe's and in the broader community.
Sure. Yes, thank you for having me. So my role at the hospital really is focused on colleagues. So all colleagues on their journey to whole health. And we do look at it through a whole health lens. We recently launched our lifestyle medicine service line, which really is focused on 6 pillars that include a healthy diet, moving more, effective stress management techniques, attaining restorative sleep, social connectedness, avoiding risky substances. And we know that all of these are interconnected. And when we think about whole health, mental health is obviously a component there. And I think the pandemic really shone a light on our colleagues' struggles, whether that be those on the front lines, really taking care of COVID patients, those who, quickly pivoted to working from home to keep things safe, and the struggles there with, balancing home life and work life, childcare, transportation, stressors like that. And so I pretty much serve as a connector to resources. And so we want to make it very easy for our colleagues to kind of have that easy button, right? One number to call, one person to reach out to who's actually on our campus, who knows the resources, both within the hospital system and in the community. And so my role has been, I don't have a mental health background. I have a public health background, and I'm a dietitian who's recently certified in lifestyle medicine. And so I'm looking at it through that lens, but I mainly serve as the connector for folks. And so we know there's been information overload during this time, right? We're getting all these emails, all this information is kind of swirling. It's hard for people to know who to reach out to, what's the best resource for them. Do they need, is it stress that's causing this kind of an anxiety? Are they struggling more with, financial or housing issues? And so how to kind of help connect them with the resource that can support them the best. So my role is a connector in that way. So I always call myself the easy button at the hospital. Reach out to me and I will get you to the right spot.
Great. Thank you, Abby. And I know you and Cindy will talk a little bit more about issues of connectedness within your organizations and sort of that whole health paradigm. And I think there'll be great interest in that. So thank you again for being with us. A big thank you to St. Joe's. And Cindy, I was negligent in not thanking Pat Slack, who is wonderful to work with from your office as well. We appreciate both of you being with us. And I'll move on then to our third panelist, Trish Cortez. Trish, in my moonlighting gig as a county commissioner, you and I have worked together quite a bit. But I'm not sure everybody is familiar with what Washtenaw County Community Mental Health is and does. You are their executive director, and you certainly have a wide purview in terms of services and in terms of things that you respond to. Could you tell us a little bit more about community mental health, or CMH as it's often called, and your role there and all that you do that's relevant to our panel today?
Sure. So yes, I'm the executive director at Washtenaw County Community Mental Health. We are kind of a safety net mental health provider for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities as well as mental illness. Historically, we've mostly served individuals who are on Medicaid. However, we are really evolving as an organization, and a lot of that credit goes to Commissioner Labar in your moonlighting job. Was the champion to get the mental health millage here in Washtenaw County passed. That has afforded this county an unbelievable opportunity that we are able to service and provide mental health services agnostic of insurance. So uninsured, underinsured, everyone has access to mental health services through CMH. We could talk a little bit more about that as those opportunities continue to get even greater. And I'll give you some data later on about who we're serving now outside of our traditional Medicaid population. But in general, we are the safety net provider for deep end needs historically. And now we also do answer the phone for anybody who needs help. So thank you, Andy, for having us here. And I think it's extremely appropriate that our own mental health millage champion is the moderator of our panel today. So thank you, Andy.
Trish is a friend, so she's making me blush, but thank you, Trish. And thank you for being here. And let's jump into a bit of panel discussion. Let me just start, Abby, if we can start with you and then go to Cindy on this first question as it relates to your roles. Can you just tell us a little bit about why are organizations focusing on well-being in 2021, and what are they doing, do you think, or will do that's different as we hopefully move into this post-pandemic era?
Sure. So I think this past year, 18 months, we've all experienced a level of stress that we may not have otherwise. So the pandemic, some of the social injustice things that have been happening. And so it's really, like I said, shown a light on how mental health affects our colleagues, whether that be at the bedside, like I said, working from home, and kind of what's the responsibility of the employer to help support those mental health needs. And so as an organization at a Trinity level, which is kind of our system office level, they implemented some tools to help. And then on site here locally in Ann Arbor, we also worked quickly to make sure that colleagues had clear information, delivered in multiple forms of communication. So some colleagues like email, some colleagues like in person, some colleagues, we have our colleagues working from home. So even if we're doing some things on site in the lobby or something to raise awareness, we're missing those folks. we have all shifts at the hospital, right? And so we really worked hard to make sure that there was some clear communication about the resources. And then from a Trinity level, they implemented what they called resiliency rounding, which was pairing a leader on site with a mental health professional to actually go up to the units and make time for those folks to share what they were experiencing. And so in a safe way, in a confidential way, in a very personal way. And so we wanted to make sure that we weren't only directing folks to, virtual resources, or here's a phone number you can call, but that we actually had folks on site to help support these folks. And so I think going forward, like I said, I believe employers have realized their responsibility in making sure that colleagues have access to those resources, and how it plays out in the workday with ability to focus, missed days, burnout, all of those things, when we're undergoing, when we have stress, anxiety, things like that, it all affects our workday, right? So as much as we try to be focused at work, when we have those other, things going on, it can be very difficult. And so as a hospital, right, we want people to be, here, present, giving safe care. And we know that helping to support those mental health things can make sure that colleagues are here and giving their all. We do a really good job of taking care of others at the hospital. We also want to make sure we're taking care of ourselves, and we have the resources to do that. And so I think as an organization, that's been brought to the forefront. And I don't see that going away. I think that will continue even, after this hump of COVID is done.
Gotcha. So that evolution post-COVID will remain in place going forward. And Cindy, do you find a similar purpose and function in your role?
Oh, 100%. I agree with everything that she talked about. From my perspective, if the question is why are organizations focusing on well-being, I think it's because well-being is a part of an integrated solution for a whole person health. And so what I mean by that is there's this continuum with people, and you could be thriving over here. You're super healthy. You're thriving in all the areas of well-being. And then there's this middle part before you need help clinically for depression or anxiety or whatever. This middle part here is a lot what well-being focuses on. Well-being is integrated to help people remain thriving and to help people who are seeking care. But this chunk of people here that are starting to feel anxious, or they're starting to feel like they have anxiety, or they're struggling financially, or they're feeling isolated, lonely, disconnected, whatever the transition in their life is, it got supercharged during COVID. All of a sudden in February, March of last year, all the people that were sitting here all of a sudden had everything amp up. So well-being as a partially solution, helping the people integrate who are thriving, supporting them not to slip over on the continuum, helping the people here to keep out of this. And I'm not saying keep out of counseling or keep out of seeing a behavioral health therapist. I'm saying that if a person starts to be anxious, there are coping mechanisms that they can learn also when they see a physician about anxiety and depression and all the things that you go clinically. They'll give them things to do, which are in our tool set here. That's kind of where organizations are starting to say, maybe I should focus on mindfulness techniques to help people understand the value of taking a breath. We talk about that all the time, but maybe as a culture, when we have meetings or we have these huge, large staff meetings, we should talk about the value of mindfulness, the value of meditation, the value of a strong culture. If employers aren't doing that before 220, they're doing it now because they realize that there's just this necessity and need for that. So employers who are smart are starting to amp up their resources for well-being, support the people who are thriving, and then also try to push that message out, anti-stigma, push the message out to those people that if you're struggling here for 14 days, usually is what you're going to hear, then you need probably to talk to somebody about it. They might give you the same resources that we do in well-being, mindfulness, meditation, journaling, rewiring your brain to happiness, all the things that we teach here, but you need to talk to somebody. So well-being is just this integrated solution that organizations are starting to really zero in on. And I think a lot of people are doing a really good job of that. And so the people who don't know what to do, that's why I really applaud this session, because we're giving them information out of the starting gate of what they can start to focus on, because it's going to be a necessity going forward. It's not about productivity anymore. Like, I just want to get widgets made and that's what I'm doing. Well-being, it's whole health. You got to take care of the person first, then they can make your widgets, then they can be productive for you. It's a different message this year.
Sure, but a consistent message we hear really in any component of the business world or just organizations in general. Your human talent is your most important component of what makes your organization successful. And it sounds like this is an enhancement of what it means to conceptualize that human talent and how to not just foster it, but strengthen it and keep it strong. So thank you for those points. We'll look forward to hearing more. And Trish, many times we think of community mental health as somewhat responsive to the needs of individuals and the community as a whole. But there's certainly a whole host of things that you do proactively. And I believe one of those is something relatively new that CMH does with business owners and organizations. Can you tell us just a bit more about that?
Well, sure. So a couple of things. Yeah. So you touched on crisis. We have seen an incredible uptick in our calls for crisis services. And so, and for an example, just from the city of Ann Arbor alone, from that geographic area, in about a 60-day period of time, we received over 450 calls, and half of those have resulted in actually deploying crisis services staff out into the community, whether that's neighborhood schools, downtown Ann Arbor, you name it, co-response with law enforcement, et cetera. So we are seeing a lot of crisis calls, as of late. And certainly I think that COVID's had a lot to do with that. But in addition to that, a lot of the work that we're doing through the millage is all more preventative upstream kind of work. So we have a anti-stigma campaign, mostly geared towards youth and responsible adults, where we're finding that it's really, we have to do more stigma work with responsible adults, and we actually have to do with kids these days. I can talk more about that later, but part of what you and I have talked about, Andy, is one of the things that we are doing through the millage is that we have trained 13 individuals, residents of Washington County, all from all different types of organizations, businesses, faith-based community, et cetera. So not really, the intent is not for mental health professionals to get trained, but really for layman individuals to get trained in a evidence-based practice training called Mental Health First Aid. It's a SAMHSA-sponsored training. So we have trained 13 individuals who will be conducting 2 trainings each a year through all of Washington County that is open to the public, open to businesses, to just learn just how we probably all at some point in our lives went through a first aid, CPR first aid training of some sort. Well, this is that, but geared towards behavioral health issues. So it's really exciting. It's a great opportunity for our community, and it certainly is geared towards employers, hospital staff, first responders, caring individuals, community members, et cetera. So it's a really exciting opportunity for folks to engage in that work.
And Trish, we will share that information with folks who are on the meeting with us today, and we'll also send out the link, because I believe you have that up on your website as well.
That's correct.
Trish, while we're with you, maybe just a more global question. I guess the presumption is that 2020 and 2021 have seen sort of a broader increase in mental health crisis response and instances. What do those numbers look like for 2020 and 2021 compared to previous years?
Well, what we're seeing a real jump is in the, now that we have opened up our services outside of just our traditional Medicaid, qualifying individuals, we are seeing a significant uptick. So, for example, in April of last year, we received, about 30 new referrals for our Millage Cares team. This last April, that has jumped up to 75. So that is what you're just seeing. And that's folks who, who call and decide to, yes, engage and kind of stay with us. That team really does a lot of, crisis work, stabilization. And then we do try to find, whether, where is another, provider in the community, if that's possible. But we're definitely seeing an uptick. We are seeing a big uptick, particularly in the range of between 20 and 35-year-olds. That seems to be kind of a group of individuals where we're seeing an uptick in need. As my fellow panelists said, I think that what we're really seeing very directly related to COVID is not only is there a lot of anxiety around fear of the known and of the unknown, a lot of anxiety of going back to work or not being able to go back to work, but we're also seeing a tremendous uptick in mental health issues amongst our youths. There's some data that is pretty alarming in terms of youth. So for you, all of you as employers who have adults that have got children, and not only may your employee be having that anxiety, but they also might be dealing with the youth that because of COVID is feeling isolated, highly depressed, highly anxious. So there's almost kind of like a secondary trauma that is happening as well. So I'm delighted to hear that my fellow panelists are doing such an amazing job of really pushing anti-stigma campaigns amongst your employees and members, because I think it's really going to take a village to really get individuals to understand. One of the things I've always said is that your brain is another organ in your body, just like your lungs, your heart, and so you need to treat it. You have to. It's just another organ. And the more that we can start doing that, especially in a time of a global pandemic that we are not out of, and I'm fear that is going to take a while to get to the other side of the behavioral health challenges that it has presented, that we all need to really, really support and embrace that individuals really get the help that they need when we think that they need it.
Great point. Abby and Cindy, maybe that's a good transition point to talk a little bit about what your organizations are doing to push back against that stigma notion, and also sort of what does it mean for an organization to build a culture of well-being? What does that journey sort of look like, and so forth? Abby, if you don't mind, we'll jump to you and then move to Cindy.
Sure. Yeah, so I think a culture is a set of norms, right? So we want it to become normal at the hospital to be talking about these things. We want it to be normal at the hospital to have resources available. We want our leaders to model this activity, right? And leaders don't always have titles. There are lots of influencers at the hospital that people look to and want to mimic their activities. And so we like to use, those folks as well. And we have some built environment things at the hospital from COVID. We've built some respite rooms on the units. It's just a place where an individual can close the door, take a breath, cry, kind of reset. We have opportunities for some healthy food options that are truly nourishing and giving us the energy that we need. And we have been doing these tables in the lobby where we provide colleagues with little tools such as a gratitude journal. And we talk about the benefit of writing down 3 good things at night before you go to sleep. The evidence behind that, it really does kind of change your brain to focus on those positives. We've, talked about the benefits of restorative sleep and a healthy sleep routine. What does that look like? How do we accomplish that if we're working a night shift versus, a typical 9 to 5? And so we've really come at it from all angles to help make it the norm at the hospital that we're having these discussions, that there are cues around. We have beautiful trails. We talk about the benefits of getting out in nature, how that helps with mental health. And so we've been really reinforcing that message. We're getting these little icons around the hospital that people are starting to recognize as, oh, this supports one of these pillars of whole health. So the respite rooms, the trails, like I said, the healthier food kind of plant forward options, and having our leaders engage in the conversation. And so the president of the hospital, Alonzo Lewis, has done a great job throughout the pandemic of being very open and vulnerable with his communication around struggles he had with not being able to see his mom during this. And, you know, it really opened up the conversation for folks. We've had several sessions that were moderated by our regional well-being coach, and just to let folks kind of call in and express what they're dealing with in a safe environment, right? That won't leave that space, and people feel like it's hard, you know, to, we deal with unique things at the hospital, you know, especially those who are giving direct patient care. And so you know, it's meaningful to have those conversations with colleagues in an open way, and feel as though they can relate and they understand what you're going through. So despite, you know, a loved one or a family's best effort, sometimes that colleague connection and feeling like, hey, we're all going through this together, so we understand, and giving opportunity for that. And so I think from all those angles, just trying to make it the norm at the hospital to have these conversations and to have these easily accessible resources, and see it from the top down.
Make it the norm, see it from the top down. I like it. Cindy, is that similar to the Blue Cross Blue Shield experience? And your thoughts?
Boy, yeah, she just gave such a fantastic answer to that question. I mean, it's exactly right on target with what organizations need to think about. Let me just expand on the leadership for a minute. Culture is different today than it was previously, even in 2020. Because so many people, not in a hospital setting, but so many people are working virtual, culture has done this wonderful morph into, I may be working at home, or I may be working at home some days and on site some days. So this extension of culture to include the house and the place where the person is working is a little bit different. It's not change your vending machines, and, you know, it used to be like put better things in your vending machines and have walking paths. All that stuff is important, but we're just looking at it a little bit differently today because of the place where people are working. So leading into that with this, Abigail did a great job talking about the leader's responsibility. The leader's responsibility to talk about it and be vulnerable. That was so cool to hear you say that, because that's exactly what we're talking about. And then in addition to that, it's also, you know, me as a director with a staff of people, there was a point last year where I was so overwhelmed with producing these shows and try to zero in on science-based research and reading articles at night. I just needed a day. So I emailed my boss, emailed my staff, and said, you guys, I need a mental health day. I need a PTO day. I called it a mental health day, but I need to do self-care for me because I am overwhelmed. So it kind of gave them the point to say, I can actually tell Cindy when I'm overwhelmed. You know, maybe that's acceptable to me to say I'm a good employee, but there are times when I'm overwhelmed. So I told him, I'm not working tomorrow, I'm taking a PTO day. I'm getting on my bike and I'm going in the woods, and I need to refresh my brain. I need to get recharged and take care of myself. So I sent them pictures, you know, while I was on the trees and stuff. And it's kind of a big joke that we all stay connected. But at the same time, it gave them that opportunity to say to me, time out, you know. And so my person that I'm under, Dr. Kopernik, I actually answer up to a physician. He knows that I can do that to him. He knows that he can send me that message, that he's doing that. And I think the people all the way up the chain at Blue Cross, all the way to Dan Lepp, have that same sense. So we feel comfortable that it's changing the culture, because it used to be, if you were to tell your leader that you needed a mental health day, you needed to recharge, they're like, whoa, she's not handling her work. Maybe we got a productivity issue. That's not where we want the culture to be. We want people to applaud people to say, I need a timeout. Because timeouts on the weekend for all of us, you know what that is. You're just as busy on the weekend that you are during the week. So for me to take a Thursday off, well, I can't take Thursday because I'm on air, but a Monday or a Wednesday or a Friday, for me, that's hugely valuable to me. Then there's this other weird space of culture that we're trying to talk about, which is, I don't know about the panelists, but I was in a staff meeting when somebody got a phone call that their relative died of COVID. Before, you probably didn't think about that in your head. The empathy that we're extending to people, that's a cultural shift. So when you have 15 or 20 people on the phone, somebody's phone keeps buzzing, but they know that I'm okay because their phone is buzzing all the time and they need to look at it. And they find out somebody just passed away from COVID and he announces it openly. And then we are all dead silent. What can we do for you? And I'm like, as a leader, hey, Jim, you need to sign off. You need to take the rest of the day. We're with you. We support you. Just let me know what you need. That kind of empathy to people, not only about how busy they are, they're burnt out or overworked, or they may be struggling with kids I don't have kids at home, but some people were schooling kids at the same time, the virtual environment. It's okay to ask somebody, are you okay? And try to get a good answer from them, because we all know the commercial where the lady, holds up the thing like a smiley face for some prescription drug. And somebody says, are you okay? And she says, yes. There are people that aren't okay. So developing that relationship and that cultural sensitivity of empathy for people, because a lot of people are not okay. 50% of us are going to have a mental health issue or illness in our lifetime. That's the new stat out. People aren't okay. So that's really the culture shift I see going into 221, is the culture of all the awesome things that Abby was talking about, and then moving forward into this mental health, behavioral health, well-being, emotional support area. That's the culture that we need to get to. And there's a lot of fantastic companies out there that are hitting that. And there's a lot of companies that still need a little bit of work on that.
It sounds like one common theme there from both of you is modeling from leadership.
Yeah.
What we want that culture to be in terms of, frankly, a more open, empathetic, and understanding workplace and organization. Great points. And Trish, let me jump to you. You made a very good point earlier on about it's not always that somebody we work with or that works for us or we work for, that they are dealing with a mental health challenge. It can be a mental health challenge of a loved one in their life. But sometimes it is a mental health challenge for them directly or some combination. Do you ever take time to sort of debrief with staff to sort of get a chance to share that information and maybe alleviate some of it?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we did at Community Health, and as we are a very deep end mental health provider. We, like Abby, the staff at the hospital, a vast majority of our staff were still working, and there were some staff who were working every day on site, and that was incredibly scary, incredibly challenging. One of the things that CMH does in partnership with others is we do critical incident response debriefings for the community. Historically, it's always been, Tornado and Dexter. We'll go out and help the community debrief. It'll be around kind of like these major events that have, have happened. Inside of business, we do it. Last times we do it for the community, for the public. During this time, as an employer, we did those debriefings, and of course, really kind of focused that we have to make sure that our assertive community treatment teams that were doing 60 home visits a day in the throes of COVID, that we were helping those staff kind of debrief about kind of the trauma and the fear that they were feeling. But as a leadership group, we did it as well. And we made it sure that the whole organization knew that, even myself as executive director and my direct reports, and it was extremely useful for us to debrief just about, although we may not have been on the front lines the way that our hero staff have been, But us, we're also still feeling that we need to debrief with each other, and also, like both of the panels are saying, is model that behavior. And we learned a lot, you know, yes, if I have the staff person that's got 3 small children crawling all over her, and where she's trying to have the meeting with managing that, and how stressful that is for her. And then I have another staff person who says, if I have one more person tell me how lucky I am that I don't have kids, do you know how lonely I am sitting in this house all day, every day? And so it was really just even us that we live and breathe mental health every day, all day. It was really fascinating of how all this is impacting each other in our homes, as Cindy said. So I think doing that debriefing even is really an important thing for all levels of an organization, and in whatever industry you're in.
Great points. And my wife is a special ed teacher, and so she has been teaching in person since September. And our 8-year-old and 5-year-old, I have had the honor and challenge of helping to school online, and the stresses at home are significant, and I think the ability to put yourself in other folks' shoes to some degree is helpful advice for all of us. And let me just use this prompt to anybody who's participating, to, if you have a question, to put that into the chat. But let me ask one more question here of our panelists. Cindy and Abby, one question for you is, what are some of the resources that you offer or know of, maybe for other organizations to start to do some of this in their own organization at a scale that's appropriate? Anything you can share with us there?
Yeah, I'll go first. So at Blue Cross, like I spoke of earlier, we have a microsite. If you go to bcbsm.com, you'll be able to see a behavioral health site, microsite we call it, but a site underneath that, which is open to the public. So elevating these resources of content and beautiful PDFs of things that you could send out to people, talking about suicide rates, mental health struggles, focusing on a multi-channel strategy. So I think it was Abby that talked about, is it email? Is it voicemail? Is it, chat? Is it through staff meetings? Or, we've got Facebook, we've got social media, we have LinkedIn going. So this approach to help people anti-stigma, and then getting the help and seek help when they need the help. And so we've got that microsite. I would say that outside of that specific awesome microsite, which everybody has a hand at Blue Cross and across the enterprise in the strategy for that, which is amazing. It's just this huge collaboration of every department at Blue Cross helping the behavioral health unit, helping them do this, supporting them and giving them information. Then it's all of us with a responsibility to elevate the conversation. So whatever our job is, so I've got that show on Tuesdays and Thursdays, or I've got the public speaking that I do, and then other people might have their venue. The sales team meets with customers. Everyone is focused and lasered in on pushing these resources and the anti-stigma campaigns and the content out to people that need it. That's probably the biggest value from the Blues, is that even if you don't have Blue Cross coverage, you can still go there, access that public site, and get all that content and information to help people get to the place they need to go. But I also want to bring up one thing that I was thinking of when you were talking, that going back to that strategy question, another one that I'm really seeing and urge people to think about is the integration of diversity and inclusion with your strategy around well-being and mental health, because it's shifted a little bit. I talked about whole health, and diversity and inclusion isn't just race and gender anymore. It's celebrating me as Cindy and everything about me. Am I introverted? Am I extroverted? Because that plays into my mental health, behavioral health, and how I talk to others. And I'll give you an example. If I'm a leader and I have an introvert or I have an extrovert that works for me, that introvert person may not say, I'm not okay. If I say, how are you doing? Are you okay? The extrovert maybe chat all day to me about it. So knowing the people that you're responsible for and knowing the employees under this diversity and inclusion, race, gender, how I act, what's my background, do I have kids, do I not have kids, I'm lonely, all the things that go into me as an individual, that all falls under D&I now, or I&D, how we put inclusion first, because it really is about inclusion and diversity. But Bridget Hurd over at Blue Cross, I had her on the show a couple of weeks ago. So if anybody wants to hear about this topic on virtual well-being, she actually did a conversation with me on it, and she really made me expand my thinking about well-being to include everyone, how I talk, the content that I produce, our culture that we have in our staff and at Blue Cross, that all has to be addressed under this diversity and inclusion lens. And so going forward, I want to make sure people understand the value of that as well.
Thank you. Abby, your thoughts?
Sure. I think, internally at the hospital, we have lots of great resources. And so from a colleague standpoint, we have our spiritual care team, we have our regional well-being coach, we have our behavioral health team. And so they've really helped me get an understanding of some of the more community-facing resources. And I think that's something to take stock of, right? We are fortunate to live in a community where there are resources available, but a lot of folks would come to me and say, seems like there's a lot of support out there. I just don't know, how to connect with the right folks. And so I think it can be overwhelming when you Google or whatever, you know what I mean, like community mental health or mental health resources in my area, things like that. And so we've tried to kind of pare down a list of these resources that we know are very valuable, evidence-based, that all folks can reach out to, whether they are colleagues or family members of colleagues or community members. And so I think that was a big piece of it, especially as people kind of moved through, the hero phase of COVID, where everybody was kind of like, you felt very supported by the community. And we had all these, great, shows of support with food and with, parades coming through and people flashing their lights and everyone having signs up, and everybody was feeling empowered and kind of put their nose down to do their work. And then people came down from that. And that's when we really started to feel like folks recognized that there were experiencing some mental health issues, and then actually got to the phase where they would start to reach out for them. So having a clear kind of list of resources that's easily accessible, I think, was our bigger challenge than kind of lack of resources, so kind of learning of the resources and connecting folks with the appropriate ones was our challenge here. So I would say take stock of those resources, but then, figure out a way to collate them in a way that makes easy sense for folks. You know what I mean? So if I'm having, trouble with anxiety, here are 3 really good resources I could reach out to. I think that's more helpful than here is 20 pages of information that maybe I don't have the mental space right now to actually weed through. And so therefore I may not actually take that next step and reach out.
Sure, and that's a good point. You sort of lose the value of the abundant resources if you can't connect to the right one. So we had a question come in from our attendees here, and this let me open it up to all of you, whoever would like to answer. But the question comes from someone who is working at a senior living community and is wondering what resources folks might have for dealing with mental health challenges in the older individual population. I open that up broadly. Trish, maybe we start with you. Is there anything CMH does or any advice you have there in terms of dealing with mental health challenges in older individuals?
Sure. So, again, our CARES team at the Millage is there and available to serve any Washington County residents, regardless of insurance or lack thereof. So that phone number is 544-3050. And I think it's also important to note that, yes, it is the same number that an individual would call would they be in a mental health crisis, but it is also the phone number that you call just if you've got a general question about mental health, how you're feeling, do you think that you should be seeking help, etc. The staff that work that phone number not only triage, but are also very well versed in many resources in the community. So whether we need to see you ourselves as community mental health or refer you to a community resource, that is an opportunity. So again, it's not just a crisis line. It's open to, even if you need someone who's looking for housing, how we can refer you to where you need to be. So again, that's 544-3050. And all this information is also on the Washington County Mental Health website.
544-3050.
Yes.
And Trish, forgive me, just while we're with you there, if you're an employer or somebody in an organization and you see a coworker that you believe is possibly having a mental health crisis, could you call that number and say, I think there's a problem or an issue here? Is that the right number to reach out to?
Absolutely. Or if you have a patron in your business that you think is having it, we've been called out all over. So we frequent Briarwood and and other places frequently, and whether that's an employee or someone who is shopping at your place, we will respond in the community.
Great. And Cindy, thank you for putting the wellness page in there. And we will add that 544-3050 to the chat. Sorry, number lock was not on. Cindy and Abby, any thoughts as it relates to older individuals from your end?
Yeah, I added that in the chat feature just so people had that bluecrossvirtualwellbeing.com, because that applies to anyone and it's very targeted and zeroed in because of our inclusion and diversity focus. We have specific episodes for seniors dealing with social isolation. In fact, ironically, I'm putting a presentation together for our senior markets in a month from now, where I'm going to talk about how to help seniors with technology to get to help them with social isolation and loneliness, through the next year or so. So there's a whole kind of conversation, if you will, that we've been having last year to make sure you stay connected, why we have to be isolated from them, using technology. And now I'll give you an example. My 82-year-old dad wanted to talk to his granddaughter in Texas, and we were trying to get him to download Zoom. And we all kind of threw our hands up. Yeah, your face, it tells it. And we kind of went, okay, we're going to come over with our mask on. We're all vaccinated. I got my first one last night, which I can't raise my left arm right now. But, so helping him stay connected was very important for his overall well-being. And so helping them with technology, because they're not so technology like we are skilled at it, then that's an important issue. So besides the 24/7 call line, the crisis line, telling seniors to flip their health card over no matter what insurance they have and look at those numbers on the back and call someone and talk to somebody about what they need, then they'll get connected up to the appropriate person and the appropriate resource. Outside of that, it's supporting seniors in all the things that we all need support in for well-being right now. And that's that show that I put in the chat section. They just have that extra couple of things that they need to stay connected to people for their livelihood. And that's what we're trying to focus with them.
And any thoughts you want to share?
Yeah, I think Cindy and Trisha's comments are right on. I echo that. I think the seniors that we've seen in the lifestyle medicine clinic, that is their number one concern, is social isolation. So they may have been used to, participating in group events, going to the gym, even, taking a walk now, people move to the other side, of the street. And so they're not getting those little interactions throughout the day that they were used to getting. And so we talked to them a little bit about the value of those micro interactions that, you know, if you're at the store and you chat with the cashier, if you're waiting in line for something, that those do add up and, you know, do help with our mental health and feeling of connectedness, right? That social connectedness piece. I think we all realize the importance of that over this past year. As a hospital system, we're also providing some free public facing like culinary classes, things like that, so that folks can get online. It's not the same as being in person, but you know, you get online, you do an activity together. It's an opportunity to connect and chat, and to have something on your schedule that day. So feel like you have a little something to look forward to. And so those are listed on our events page on our lifestyle medicine website through St. Joe's. But that's one kind of public offering that we've recognized, and we're trying to, you know, provide some resources to just help do something fun and healthy and connect with each other that way.
Great. And we did have a chat come in, the wonderful Barbara Neese from Safe House Center. Just a plug for Safe House Center. If anybody's experiencing domestic violence or sexual assault, obviously there can be mental health issues there. Also, the Women's Center of Southeast Michigan, they provide mental health services and support regardless of ability to pay. It's important for us to understand what's out there in our ecosystem, just broadly. Folks, usually at the end of the event, I have time to amble on for a few minutes. That's not the case today. That's really because this has been excellent information, and I want to thank all three of you for being with us here, but more importantly for what you're doing in your organizations and as you interact with the community. Trish, with CMH, with all that you do, it's vital to hear from experts like you so that we can do our part as employers and employees to really create a workplace and hopefully an overall culture that is empathetic and understanding of mental health challenges, and that is proactive in trying to make sure that folks have the help they need and the help we all need to do our best. So to the three of you, thank you so much for being with us on the panel today. And we will share your information that you've shared today with folks post-event. But thank you so much. Cindy, an extra thanks to you for Blue Cross Blue Shield sponsorship today, and to all the folks who were with us. We look forward to seeing you at the next early edition, the next chamber events. And thank you so much for being a part of the chamber and for being with us here this morning.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone else, take care. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.